the Abraham Accords, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or Trump supporter or not, most people would say is probably a plus for Israel and other parts of the Middle East. So, who do you think deserves the credit for that? Is that President Trump? Is it the State Department, the White House? Who actually put together those agreements with several countries now?
David, it was a big team effort. It was first enabled by President Trump, who made some decisions at the beginning of his time as president, which enabled us. What were those? Those were the simple recognition of the rightful capital of Israel being in Jerusalem, the homeland of the Jewish people, the fact that the Golan Heights was rightly part of Israel, the issue from the statement from the State Department, which talked about settlements not being necessarily illegal in every situation, the policy we took with respect to Iran, putting pressure on Iran, not taking Iran as our primary security partner in the Middle East, but in fact, flipping the script and acknowledging that the Gulf states had the rightful capacity and Israel had the rightful capacity to defend themselves from Iran and putting real pressure on Iran. Those things all enabled the good work. And then it was a team effort. Jared Kushner and his team at the White House, our State Department team, the team at the Department of Treasury, all had a hand in making sure that we delivered the outcomes which enabled these nations to make the right decision, which was that Israel is not a threat, but a partner. Israel is a friend, not an enemy, and that they ought to normalize relationships with them. It's a good thing. We've got a handful so far. I'm confident that there will be more. It's the direction of travel. It's the direction of history. And I'm glad that we were here to be the partners for these countries that enabled them to get across the line to make this decision.
Now, one of the countries that most recently joined the Abraham Accords is Morocco. And subsequent to that, or around that same time that they announced their support, the U.S. government announced that it supported Morocco's control over Western Sahara. And was that a quid pro quo, or that was unrelated to the agreement, to the Abraham Accords?
You know, David, in every situation with these Abraham Accords, these were a complex set of discussions. And so there were lots of things taking place, but make no mistake about it, whether it's the Moroccans or the Sudanese or the Bahrainis or the Emiratis, whoever it is that made this decision, we're working with countries in Asia that I'm hopeful will make a similar decision before too long. They'll make those decisions because it's in the best interest of their country. And I'll give you the Emiratis as a good example. Their decision to normalize their relationship with Israel allowed us to begin to develop a security relationship with them that is different. So we are now going to sell them high-end American equipment to permit them to defend themselves. Those are things that can happen. And so you talk about quid pro quo. The truth is these are how relationships change and how partners and security partners work together. And it's true in Sudan. It's true in the Emirates. It was certainly true with respect to Morocco. We announced that we're going to begin the process of establishing a State Department operation in the Western Sahara. Those are things that can happen once nations make a decision that they want to be part of this structure, the structure that the Abraham Accords lay out.
Okay, so what you're referring to, the high-tech equipment, the F-35s are now going to be sold to UAE, but that wasn't a quid pro quo, is what you're saying. It was a natural evolution of the relationship?
Well, we always, you remember with respect to Israel, we always, indeed, we have a legal requirement to make sure that Israel maintains its qualitative military edge. But that concept, the idea of Israel's security being central to how America thinks about not only its relationships, but its sale of American equipment, changes when a country decides that Israel is not a threat, but a partner. And so you can begin to open up things that can happen that couldn't have happened elsewise.
Now, when you last visited Israel, you became the first Secretary of State to visit the West Bank territories that are now occupied by Israel and through settlements, and also to visit the Golan Heights. So was that a conscious statement to visit areas that previous Secretaries of State hadn't been willing to visit? And what do you think the purpose of your visit was in terms of sending a signal to the Palestinians and others in the Middle East by visiting those sites?
Well, not just the visits, David, but everything that the administration has done has been very clear, not just signals. We've communicated directly with the Palestinians about the fact that they need to stop the model that they have adopted, which is that no deal is good enough for them. In the end, the president laid down a vision for peace. And his vision for peace included a really, really good outcome for the people that live in the West Bank. They've rejected that. They've rejected even the willingness to start a conversation about this. That's unacceptable. And so what What we've done is, whether that was my trip to Judea and Samaria or my visit to the Golan Heights or the Abraham Accords, we've simply said, we're going to recognize what's real, what the reality is. We're going to acknowledge that. We're going to ask Palestinian leadership to step up and do the same. So far, they have declined to do that. I hope that they will. I hope they'll do it today or tomorrow or the next day. If they do, if they get that right, I am very confident that they being the people that live in these places, can live a far better existence than they do today. They can have more control and autonomy over their own lives, more wealth and prosperity as well. But so long as their leadership chooses to reject the willingness of the Israelis to engage in a conversation with them about how to move forward, then the plight of these people will continue to be challenged in ways that are just awfully sad.